Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host and most, Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, May the 5th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, William Buchanan, and so far I am doing just swimmingly in the linguistics department today. But on How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, I always want to say this is a family-friendly podcast. I do try to watch my language, but sometimes we may show some things of a violent or graphic nature, so viewer discretion advised. Aside from that, welcome. Well, let's get to it, folks. Yes, it's if I look a little bit weird, unfortunately, if you've been watching my Facebook posts, I've had to retire some machines and bring in some new ones, so I apologize for my background looking like a tornado hit. Just because you see a bucket in the background that I didn't get out of the shot, my apologies. But let's go ahead and get into it. Definitely some news during this midweek that we're in of May, and let's start with the Republicans, basically.
No longer be a question of if, but when Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney is stripped of her leadership post in the House Republican Conference.
We call for a vote to seek the removal of Liz Cheney from your leadership team.
You know, the conference decides all that. We're here talking about small business.
Just a few months ago, Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy defended Cheney from the backlash of conservative members angry over her vote to impeach former President Trump and her critique of his role in the January 6th insurrection. Now McCarthy seems content to let the conference's far-right members take Cheney out of her role as the third-ranking House Republican.
I have heard from members concerned about her ability to carry out the job as conference chair, to carry out the message. We all need to be working as one if we're able to win the majority.
Cheney, meanwhile, seems prepared to go down swinging, refusing to lie about Trump. This is about whether the Republican Party is going to perpetuate lies about the 2020 election and attempt to whitewash what happened on January 6th. Cheney spokesperson Jeremy Adler said in a statement, "Liz will not do that. That is the issue." As the pressure mounts, Cheney, in a closed-door meeting with donors, said that Trump's behavior on January 6th was just too much for her. It is a threat to democracy. What he did on January 6th is a line that cannot be crossed. The jockeying to replace Cheney is already underway. Sources tell CNN that New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik is already making calls about the job. Some Republicans would like to replace Cheney with another woman. In addition to Stefanik, Jim Banks, who currently chairs the influential Republican Study Committee, is being considered, as well as Jackie Orlowski of Indiana, and a dark horse, Mike Johnson of Louisiana, a prominent member of the Conservative Freedom Caucus. Meanwhile, Democrats are seizing on the GOP drama. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi sending an email accusing Republicans of looking for, quote, a non-threatening female seeking replacement for House Republican Conference chair. So the question is, what happens next and how soon could it happen? Well, it's going to require a vote of the Republican conference to remove Cheney from her post. They are expected to meet sometime next week, and that's where we could see resolution to this issue.
Now, the problem I have with this, folks, is, again, for all those that don't know, Liz Cheney was one of the very few Republicans that actually did vote not once, but twice, to impeach Donald Trump when he was president. More specifically, over the January 6th riots, which seemed like a year ago now, but it still happened the same year, believe it or not. So we're not surprised at this point that, of course, anybody's paying attention, Trump from Florida is still running the Republican Party for reasons beyond my comprehension. And the only reason why everybody's going after Liz Cheney is because she voted to impeach Trump. As much as the rest of the Republicans who did vote to impeach Trump, that they say are probably expecting retaliation to happen against them. This isn't surprising. Republicans eat their young all the time. I sit there and say again, how could anybody who's a woman or a minority be Republican? The party literally stands against everything that you stand for. But again, we seem to have some. Now, again, like I said before, I'm not a Republican. I can't be Democrat. I get definitely not Democrat because, again, they can't seem to get their minds together on one thing. I'm more of a progressive individual. But again, even I noticed that, okay, there is some sense, I guess you could say, on the Republican side, especially when someone realizes that they're Republican and says Donald Trump is a threat. I mean, truth be told, let's look at Facebook today. Of all the news that's going on today, the most massive news in the world was, would Facebook give Donald Trump his platform back? Look, I'm going to be honest, it's been very peaceful. Since he got banned from Facebook, he got banned off of Twitter, he got banned from all social medias, and I love it. You know why? Because we need to be able to sit there and finally say in one loud voice, we need to take away some people's abilities to speak, especially to a mass group. And it was quiet. It was a peaceful. It's been peaceful. Still is peaceful. And again, the news about the whole today was will Facebook lift its ban on Donald Trump? Who out there is asking for Donald Trump to get his Facebook profile back? I mean, you would think for a guy who's so rich, who's so powerful, who's so successful, he'll just come up with a social media network of his own like Parler and say, I'm going to be speaking there. All my followers can come there. You think by now he would have done that. But again, going back to the story at hand, again, Kevin McCarthy, who is the House Minority Leader, again, it's amazing that he's paying this much attention to Liz Cheney, yet that Marjorie Taylor Greene person is still in office, who has no budget assignments, who is not on any committees, who doesn't have any budget assignments. She's literally in Congress getting paid to do nothing. You know the job that we always said we wanted? I would just love to be sitting here and get paid for doing nothing. Well, that's Marjorie Taylor Greene right now. She's literally getting paid in Congress to do nothing. I wish I could make this up. Although this would be very hypocritical of Republicans to turn around and do anything toward Liz Cheney while Marjorie Taylor Greene has done way worse in the amount of time she's been elected than Liz Cheney has in doing the right thing and pretty much agreeing with the rest of the world saying Donald Trump is a menace and we should do something about it. Not surprised by that. But anyway, moving right along, guys, I did actually want to talk about this other story, which again has also come up in the news, and I find this interesting. House Democrat is introducing the bill to release COINTEL profiles on the surveillance of Black Panthers and Fred Hampton. Now, for all those that don't remember, there was a certain movie that did come out called Judas and the Black Messiah, which again had Daniel Coulier and Lika Stanfield, who were also playing in the movies as respective roles, of course, showing the role of Fred Hampton in the Rainbow Coalition and the introduction of the Black Panthers, which did eventually lead to that very, very dark day in Chicago where the police did conduct a legal raid, killing Fred Hampton and several others, which was also depicted in the movie. Now, I find it interesting that, again, this goes back to what I said about racial stereotypes. The simple fact of the matter is that, yes, prominent African-American figures like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, the Black Panthers, go down the list. They have all been under some sort of surveillance. Which again, if they do release this, which is another thing I did find very interesting, that they do release this for the simple fact of the matter, which again, this all happened under J. Edgar Hoover. That's the one thing I do want to point out to everybody. All of this happened under J. Edgar Hoover. He had dirt on everybody. And again, he was the one that actually started the surveillance program, saying that because he was comparing these African American prominent leaders to communists. Yes, that was his reason. But anyway, if the bill does get passed, those files will be released, and as well as the J. Edgar Hoover name will be taken off the front of the FBI building, and I will sit there and say it's about time. Another thing that's crazy, because a lot of people say, going back to Tim Scott's comments, America isn't a racist country, even though he pretty much said the complete. Even though when he gave this whole thing of my family went from picking cotton to being to voting in the polls. I've been racially profiled, but I see the beauty in police as they racially profile me. Yeah, he said that. Even worse, Kamala Harris did agree with Tim Scott saying America isn't a racist country, and I'm like, oh, Kamala, you were doing so well. Oh, Kamala, you were doing so well. There's just nothing is worse. Because I said it before about Kamala Harris. I love the fact that we have a Madam Vice President who is black. I think it's groundbreaking. I think it's great. I still said that even at the beginning of the podcast, way back for the election, I said if she is elected, she is going to have a rough road ahead of her. This is going to be her this first term is going to be her proving term. And the decisions and things that she says and makes are going to affect her, because this will all be brought up on her record, since she is literally the first Madam Vice President. Even more so, twice as much because she's black. Because that's how they look at it. And for her to sit there and say, agree with Tim Scott, America isn't a racist country. I literally closed my eyes and I was like, you are doing so well. Because again, you can tell after she made that comment, she hasn't said anything else. You noticed that, right? Once she sat there and agreed with Tim Scott, which by the way, Tim Scott's the only black senator in an all-white party. That's like being the fly in an ointment. And I'm like, how in the world can you sit there and say America is a racist country, or America isn't a racist country, when you are literally affirmative action sitting inside a political party, right? But anyway, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I've always, it's always been said, if your mom hasn't said it, then other people have said it, that they make rules for them and laws for us. And again, this example, these two stories I'm about to bring up have been exactly that. I start with the first one here. The first one I want to bring up was, again, Pennsylvania man sentenced to 5-year probation after voting in the name of his dead mother. This actually happened during the election, where a man was trying to vote he's trying to re-elect then President Trump by using the name of his deceased mother in a sense of voting twice. Mr. Bartman received the sentence Friday after receiving a guilty plea to 2 counts of perjury and 1 count of unlawful voting. He will lose his right to vote for 4 years, pursuant to the Pennsylvania statute of limitations. Now, here's the thing. Keep in mind the reason why I'm bringing this up. That, of course, they don't have a picture of the man. Figure that one out. But again, he voted in the name of his dead mother. Right? Now, why is that important? Because not only did he get 5 years probation, but again, Bruce Barton is white. Now, why is this irrelevant? Because of this woman.
I had a lot of support while I was in prison, a lot of support around the world.
What happened? Because it sounds like you yourself were quite confused about whether you had the right to vote.
Well, my mom advised me to go vote, and I was putting it off all the way into the last day. And I promised her that I was going to go do it. She's very big with that. Anybody that's 18 years old, go vote. And I went in to go and vote. And they told me that I was not on the list. So I was getting ready to walk out the door, and the young man told me, well, you can do a provisional ballot. And I asked him, what is a provisional ballot? He said, if you're at the right location, it'll count. And if you're not, it won't. And I said, okay. From there, she walked me to a little booth, and I told her I wanted to do a straight ticket. She said, this is Republican and this is Democrat. And I chose what I wanted, and I dropped my stuff off and I left.
And you had no inclination from anyone at that polling station that there were consequences if you were ineligible to vote and you voted on a provisional ballot?
No, not at all. I had no idea. There's no way that I would have attempted to vote, to leave my children, to lose my job, to go through what I'm going through right now. There's no way that I would have attempted to try to vote. In the state of Texas, with a felony on my record, I can still vote. So I knew that being a felon, you can still vote. I just didn't know that being on supervised release, I was ineligible to vote.
What is your bigger takeaway from this?
That this is very political, that this is just very political, just scaring everybody from the polls now. I mean, at first it was discouraging, and the first thing I was saying was, I'm never voting again. You know, that was my first intake, like, wow, like I'm facing leaving my family again for trying to vote, exercise my rights, me being a citizen here. I never would have imagined that I would be going through this right now.
Now, the thing about it is, like I said, I pointed this out for several reasons. Bruce Bartman, again, voted for a dead person, got 5 years probation. Crystal Mason voted not knowing that because she was on supervised release, made her ineligible to vote, got 5 years. Bruce Bartman is white, Crystal Mason is black. Please explain, aside from the obvious, why one gets probation and one gets jail time. Because I've had someone try to make that argument. Again, the argument they tried to make was, well, she's already a felon. So because she wanted to exercise her vote, which again, in the state of Texas, she can definitely do as a felon. But again, the little hiccup, if you will, is just that because she's on supervised release, she was ineligible to vote. Again, she was only following the instructions that was given to her by the pollsters while she was there to vote. And she's exactly right. What this actually will wind up doing, I mean, it's like you said, this might have turned her off to voting. This may have dismayed those who, again, like I said, if you're a felon and you're a felon of a non-violent crime, then yeah, your right should vote to be restored. You have that's the thing that should automatically happen. But again, this is one of those things where I point out that Bruce Bartman got 5 years probation for something that's usually followed with 5 to 10 years in prison. Crystal Mason did the same thing, and they didn't hesitate to give her 5 years. That is the part I have an issue with. Like, how in the world, aside from the fairly obvious, what makes one different than the other? Except for the fact of race. And let's be honest, anybody who sit there and says that race has nothing, that America isn't a racist country, show them those 2 cases. I beg to differ. But speaking of things that are racial, of course, there is some news from the camp of Derek Chauvin, as they, like any other losing team in the NFL, are throwing out Hail Marys.
For Derek Chauvin filing a motion for a new trial 2 weeks after he was convicted of murdering George Floyd, citing factors including, quote, the interests of justice, abuse of discretion that deprive the defendant of a fair trial, prosecutorial and jury misconduct, errors of law at trial, and a verdict that is contrary to law. The motion coming as one of the jurors explains his decision to attend last year's March on Washington after a photo of the juror, Brandon Mitchell is his name, surfaced online, which showed him wearing a Black Lives Matter cap and a shirt that reads, "Get your knee off our necks." Now, the motion does not specify what the alleged jury misconduct is. But the question is, does this give Chauvin grounds for an appeal? Adrian Broaddus is out front.
High school basketball coach and podcast host.
Brandon Mitchell is better known as Juror 52 in the Derek Chauvin murder trial that ended last month. But now the 31-year-old high school basketball coach is responding to criticism surrounding this photo. It shows Mitchell wearing a Black Lives Matter baseball cap and a T-shirt saying, quote, "Get your knee off our necks." Mitchell told the Star Tribune this photo was posted to his uncle's Facebook account after the March on Washington last August, commemorating Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. Mitchell did not confirm or deny the photo's authenticity to CNN. That event, also known as the Get Your Knee Off Our Necks Commitment March, included demands for police reform and racial equality. Mitchell told our affiliate WCCO he participated in a voter registration drive in Washington, not a protest.
It was huge to get people getting voter turnout. So being a part of that and being able to attend, the same location where Martin Luther King gave his speech was a historic moment.
During jury selection questioning, Mitchell was only specifically asked by attorneys about protests in the Twin Cities immediately following George Floyd's death last year. He told the Star Tribune he responded no to the following questions. Did you or someone close to you participate in any of the demonstrations or marches against police brutality that took place in Minneapolis after George Floyd's death? And other than what you have already described above, have you or anyone close to you participated in protests about police use of force or police brutality? Last week, Mitchell talked to us about his experience.
I feel like the evidence was overwhelming.
Why did you want to be a member of this jury?
I personally felt like it was a historic moment. By me just being on the jury alone and being a Black man from Minneapolis, that alone was already a historic moment just by being on the jury, regardless of what the verdict would have been.
So, Adrian, jury misconduct is just one of many reasons Chauvin's lawyer says his client deserves a new trial. What are some of the other examples that you see going through the filing?
You know what, Aaron, this filing is so broad. In it, Nelson writes about failure to sequester the jury. He talks about the judge denying a change of venue, and he also talks about the publicity surrounding the case. It's also important to underscore, he does not name Brandon Mitchell or any of the other jurors in this motion. Keep in mind, there are 11 other people who deliberated in that room with Mitchell, and we know nothing about them. Legally, he had 15 days to file a motion for a new trial. The deadline is tomorrow. Aaron?
So let's talk about this Hail Mary. I've been saying this in my Facebook post, guys. This is literally and figuratively a desperation attempt, because there are a few reasons you should understand why. Number one, the overwhelming evidence. Number two, before this trial even started, there was jury selection. The defense and the prosecutor both agreed on their jury pool. This was not random selection. They both interviewed both parties, for the plaintiffs and for the plaintiff and the defendant, for the state and the defendant, all sat there and vetted and investigated. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Vetted and questioned these potential jurors and add them to the jury pool. On top of that, there was no issue with. He talked about sequestering, but again, the jurors were pretty much barred in their hotel and not allowed to view anything from the outside world. That's sequestering by any means. Keep in mind, beforehand, though, it was already hard enough to find a jury because the videotape of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd was seen all around the world. Trying to find a jury out there who hadn't found that video was like trying to find a winning lottery ticket in Tennessee. Good luck. At the same time, he was given a fair trial. For the simple fact of the matter, his defense tried everything. They tried to question George Floyd's bill of health. They tried to question his mindset. They tried to say, they tried to bring in a use of force expert that said that the prone position wasn't dangerous. They tried to sit there and say, well, George Floyd basically caused his own death, and that was not me from the officer. The legal defense team for Derek Chauvin has tried every avenue, realizing they were fighting an uphill battle where the one thing that got him the most was the evidence of him on video. He got a fair trial. And that's the thing about it. And that's the thing about where a lot of people are not going to, they try to say, well, he wasn't this. I said, even though, so the juror had on Black Lives Matter. Yes, so the juror had on Black Lives Matter and how to get your knee off our necks. Did that in any way influence his decision? Again, it's hard to say that when 11 other jurors all came to the same conclusion. So if you're gonna stand and say it's a mistrial because of one juror, because keep in mind, folks, that's the one thing that they're trying to go for. Mistrial. They want to muddy the waters so much that there has to be a mistrial declared so the charges can get so the guilty verdicts can be thrown out and we start this whole circus again. That is what Chauvin's defense lawyers are attempting to do right now. They are attempting to muddy the waters and get enough jurisprudence in there to where a mistrial can literally be called for, and we do the same song and dance again. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen, because again, as you heard from the correspondence there, it is a broad stroke of things that that Derek Chauvin's lawyers are saying that honestly isn't going to catch any merit. But again, good luck. Beyond that, guys, like I said, moving forward, we do have another story, which I think it's funny. Well, I won't say funny. I will just, how can I put this ever so nicely? I say it's interesting because I'm a big person on education. And let's be honest, public education these days, thanks to, even before Betsy DeVos came and wrecked it all, was going downhill. Even more so now that there is a question of how race will be talked about in classrooms. I wish I could make this up.
Playing out in schools across our country, many educators are rethinking how race and the roots of racism in this country should be tackled in the classroom. While some critics say that the so-called woke movement has gone too far, especially when it impacts their children. ABC's Terry Moran examines this growing flashpoint.
Schools in America are supposed to be places where dreams are born and our children learn to reach for them together. But today, more and more of our schools, like so many other places in American life, have become battlegrounds where the adults are fighting each other furiously over issues of identity, power, and the meaning of our history.
Our children are taught in school to hate their own country and to believe that the men and women who built it were not heroes, but that were villains.
As President Donald Trump, with characteristic bluster and exaggeration, stoked the controversy in the schools. He made local schools a national issue.
We will stop the radical indoctrination of our students and children and restore patriotic education to our schools.
So what is really happening in our schools?
I think there's a lot of mythology and rumor and confusion, so that people are kind of arguing about things that they are not actually clear on what's happening.
Takima Bunch-Smith is a former New York City school teacher and now executive director of the Center on Culture, Race, and Equity at Bank Street College of Education. She helps schools and other organizations implement equity policies and practices.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
This is really a time, I think, to think about ultimately what kind of world do I want to live in and what kind of a world do my children deserve to live in.
Say his name!
That's an urgent goal in today's America, but how we get there is bitterly dividing school communities, bringing a long-simmering conflict to full boil.
There is definitely an overfixation and obsession with race. You know, in New York City, 50% of our kids aren't even reading at grade proficient level.
Yatin Chu is the mom of a 10-year-old who attends a New York City public school, an immigrant to America from Taiwan, and co-president of Place NYC. That's an advocacy group. Chu thinks this is not where the school's focus should be.
It is infusing a lot of what students are learning in the classroom with discussions about race. I find that to be problematic.
Then there's the fight over what and how kids are taught about social justice and equality, and the conceptual tool some schools are using to do that. It's called critical race theory.
Critical race theory is not a bad word, although it may have been demonized for political reasons. The reality is it's about equity. It's about justice.
President Trump actually banned critical race theory from being used by the federal government in racial sensitivity trainings for federal employees.
Students in our universities are inundated with critical race theory. This is a Marxist doctrine, holding that America is a wicked and racist nation.
So what is it? There's no strict definition of critical race theory, but basically it's a reformist theory that supports a redistribution of power in institutions by exposing racism and acting to eliminate it.
It's about making sure that every single child gets to thrive and be fully human in everything that they do.
Advocates point to data they say reveal the scope of the racial disparities in our schools. A 2019 report found that 44% of white 8th graders were deemed proficient at math, compared with just 14% of black students and 20% of Hispanic students. And a 2016 report on disciplining practices in schools found that black K-12 students are 3.8 times more likely to receive out-of-school suspensions than white students.
Do you attribute what happened in your kids' lives to racism, either implicit, unconscious, embedded, or otherwise?
Absolutely. It is a matter of unconscious bias.
Pastor Michelle Thomas is a mom of 3 in Loudoun County, Virginia, and the head of the local NAACP. Her kids all went to public schools. Michelle says she had to fight to get her daughter Anna into an advanced science program, even though she had the requisite grades and scores.
Look, you got a great kid that could have been and was in all honors classes, but her mommy had to push. What about all of the mummies that work? What about all the fathers that work that don't have the time to go and fight, that don't have the, temperament to sit and have your child devalued and degraded?
Opponents of this kind of training, they say by focusing on race, it's divisive. It's making people more conscious of it and therefore more racist.
If you had cancer and did not focus on it, you will die. Racism is a cancer that's killing America.
But critics call all that just wokeness run riot. And in New York City's Tony private schools, where tuition for grade schoolers can top $50,000 a year, the battles over it are getting pretty crazy. And some parents are speaking out at the Riverdale Country School in the Bronx.
Children are being taught to see each other as defined by their skin color.
Mayan Bartning is an investor in New York and co-founder of the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, which advocates against CRT-based education. Bartning, who describes himself as half Mexican, Native American, and half Jewish, took his 2 young children out of Riverdale when he learned about the equity curriculum.
They didn't look deep enough. They didn't really stop and say, well, is this really achieving our goals?
Bartning says his foundation already has 20,000 members from across the country, parents concerned about the impact of these new ideas on their kids.
When we have a whole bunch of little kids who are told from a very young age that they are defined by their skin color, that you're going to end up with a society where everybody's tribal and everybody is racist.
Our students are not living in a colorblind society.
Scott Ziegler is interim superintendent of the Loudoun County, Virginia School Board outside Washington, D.C. More than 80,000 public school students. And here, too, race and justice in the schools have divided families, with social media threats actually triggering a criminal investigation. Ziegler taught history for 17 years before going into administration, and his view of this swirling controversy is simple.
If I start making decisions based on what adults want, or what adults need, I've missed the mark.
You've got a group of parents who have gotten very angry about these efforts, and they're accusing you of political correctness, of trying to impose an ideology on their children.
That's not what we're about. I'm here to do the best that I can for students. My students are telling me that they're having racially charged incidents in our schools. And that tells me I need to do something about that.
And Pastor Michelle Thomas, she's an optimist, believing that all the struggle and debate over these issues will, in the long run, help the country.
We have a great opportunity to elevate the education and the humanity and the citizenship of all of our students.
For ABC News Live.
All right, so let's think about this for a second. We don't want to teach critical race theory in schools because this will make people more divisive. I don't think that's going to be the problem right about now. Again, you teach them, and it's amazing where you have these people like, well, we don't want our children to be, they're gonna find out that they're judged by their skin tones. Okay, I find it interesting. I find it interesting that, of course, we are judged by our skin tones. We are judged by our race. We are judged by our statuses in life. Statistics don't lie. Even the statistics they shown in the news clip there about black children being 3.8 more times likely to receive out-of-school suspensions than white children. White children excel while black and my other minorities don't excel as well. I mean, again, the only thing about critical race theory would point out the fact that white supremacy has learned to use the law and cultivate it to where they always made sure they had a step ahead of everybody else. But again, that's also history. Keep in mind, they also don't want history told the way it should be told. That yes, that the pilgrims, the settlers, those that actually did come to America, were not the rosy blue sky settlers we thought they were. There were some attempts at genocide, some successful attempts at genocide. At the same time, there was enslavement. At the same time, there was progression. One race progressed while the other ones receded, which still goes on today. But again, they don't want to discuss critical race theory, but you want to do this inclusion. And to me, that makes no sense. If you're going to do inclusion, then of course we have to realize, again, like I said, I'm a big fan of history. And I've heard this saying many a times before, those who refuse to learn history are doomed to repeat it. We are doomed to repeat it if we keep on sitting there saying that for the simple fact of the matter that we don't have that discussion about race, that we don't have discussion about the history of race and racism in this country. If we don't do those things, then no matter how woke the woke movement is, the woke movement will wind up separating itself, because you're going to have those individuals out there who say, I just don't want my children to know about race. I don't want my children to stick to their own race, to be tribal. Well, it's a little hard to say it to black folks, because black folks had to stick together for the last 400 years because no other race was actually giving us shine. So, yeah, I'm on the opposite side. I think it's high time for us to really reconsider our educational approach, and it's more than time for us to be literally honest about this history of America, because aside from some bright areas, there's a lot of dark spots, which they might as well just go ahead and get over with and allow the younger generation to break the generational curses. But moving right along, guys, the one thing I did want to sit there and say, oh, Vaughn, what's going on, man? Swipe it under the rug. Nope, won't speak about it. Yeah, that's pretty much what they're doing. That's, well, some won't do. Some of them have this, all-inclusive rainbow coalition. We're just going to forget about the past type of thing, and that goes nowhere. But moving along to California, where apparently anybody can be governor. There is a new surprising person out there that has released their first campaign ad, and I'm not surprised.
Recall election as reality TV star gold medalist and activist Caitlyn Jenner is kicking off her bid for governor of California with her first campaign ad as she faces backlash for recent comments on trans athletes. ABC's Jonathan Carl has the details.
California needs a disruptor, a compassionate disruptor.
Reality TV star, gold medalist, and activist Caitlyn Jenner is kicking off her bid for governor of California.
California is facing big hurdles. Now we need leaders who are unafraid to leap to new heights. He does not want to finish record in this way. He wants the world record. Who are unafraid to challenge and to change the status quo.
Before coming out as a trans woman in 2015, Jenner first found fame as an Olympic athlete, setting the world record in the decathlon, but running as a Republican to replace Democrat Gavin Newsom in the deep blue state of California might be the most difficult competition Jenner has ever faced.
I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat. I'm ready to be governor for all Californians.
But just days into her campaign, Jenner is now being accused of betraying the transgender community. Over the weekend, she seemed to side with a recent Republican-led wave of legislation to limit transgender rights in at least 31 states. Telling TMZ she supports barring trans female athletes who are biological boys from girls' sports in schools.
This is a question of fairness. That's why I oppose biological boys who are trans competing in girls' sports in school. It just isn't fair.
Our thanks to Jonathan Karl, and for more on this.
I'm sorry. I know Caitlyn Jenner. Let's be honest. You think we get rid of the Kardashians by now, but apparently they just stick around like bad termites. But yes, Caitlyn Jenner is seriously considering a governor bid for the recall of Gavin Newsom from the very blue state of California. California hasn't had a Republican governor since Arnold Schwarzenegger ran so long ago. And I'm going to be honest, this ship already feels like it's sinking just because of her comments towards transgender athletes, of course, saying about the question of fairness. I've said it before many times on this podcast, and I've also said it on my Off Limits podcast, that, of course, transgender athletes they're not going away. And again, they might as well keep on saying fairness. It's all about fairness. Here's the thing about fairness. Sports isn't fair, it's competitive. I'm like, it's amazing that boys and girls play with each other on the playgrounds, intramurals, but when it comes to student athletes, they're like, oh no, boys, if you were born a boy, you should play in the boys league. If you were born a girl, you should play with a girls league. Here's the funny thing about this, and I keep saying this, what's going to wind up happening is because the NCAA welcomes transgender athletes, which means that since the NCAA and those schools that have those mighty nice scholarships that go out there and recruit these players, I just have a question. What will these parents and other people say when the NCAA goes out and starts recruiting these transgender athletes to play on these women and men's teams? Because what's going to be fair about it? Are you going to be mad that the NCAA actually sat there and recruited these players? Or are you going to be mad about the fact of just that, well, they're just getting this because they're transgender? But I thought it was all about fairness. So not surprised, although for Caitlyn Jenner, this might be the quickest governor bid that she's ever had on record, but I'm not surprised about that. But again, California, what can you say? Moving right along, I did want to get to Biden. We do have a little bit of Biden news because, again, Biden did have this. I mean, he's done great strides. I will say this about Biden. Old man Biden, within 5 months of him being president, has done more in 5 months than Trump has done in 4 years. His vaccinations right now are exceeding records. Now, he still has this whole thing of all of us being COVID-free by the 4th of July. He has now came out with a new goal that he would like to set. Let's see.
The president promises a faster return to life as we knew it before the pandemic. By the 4th of July, the president wants 70% of American adults to receive at least one vaccine dose and 160 million to be fully inoculated.
No one should wait. Let's try to hit that 70% mark.
To meet the new benchmark, the president says vaccine access must be easier. The White House launching vaccines.gov and a new mobile texting option so Americans can easily locate vaccination sites. And to cut the red tape, pharmacies across the country will offer walk-in visits, no appointments necessary.
Many adults have not been vaccinated because they have found it too confusing or too difficult or too inconvenient to get a shot. We're going to make it easier than ever.
To reach the president's goal, 100 million doses need to be administered in the next 60 days, a significant slowdown in the pace of vaccinations, a critical component convincing the hesitant.
I don't know. I think I'm afraid. I don't know if I'm going to get it.
With new COVID infections dropping, vaccinations are also in a free fall. The White House moving away from mass sites to more mobile clinics focusing on hard-to-reach communities. At some grocery stores, shoppers will get a discount if they get vaccinated. Shots are even being given at professional soccer and baseball games.
I got my COVID vaccine, Johnson & Johnson.
The promise of a new tomorrow comes as additional states ease restrictions today. And with more Americans getting inoculated, the CDC could soon lift even more restrictions.
Okay, so again, I give President Biden his props. He is trying to push for inoculations as fast as humanly possible. He is trying his hardest to do so. Even more so than he would like to get at least 70% of Americans inoculated, hopefully before the 4th of July. Again, there's this whole thing about us being able to barbecue and whatnot. Now, again, I've already gotten my vaccination shots. I gotten the Pfizer shot, so I had to go back for twice, which I'm fine. The thing that has killed me the most at this point, individuals are refusing to get the shot. I'm trying to really understand that, because I've said it multiple times. Again, this is how anti-vaxxers, I said, honestly, I think this is how anti-vaxxers got started. I think the simple fact of the matter is this is their bread and butter. They choose to disseminate, dismay, and distract people from doing the one thing that could possibly save your life. Get the freaking shot. They're infecting. I said, okay, if you're the person that's saying they're infecting us with Rona, that tells me off the bat your knowledge of vaccines and viruses and pandemics is severely limited. I'm not calling you slow. I'm just calling you easily manipulated. Because simple fact of the matter, guys, this is nothing new. This happened with smallpox. This happened with polio. This happened measles. This happened with mumps. Again, these are all things that eventually will be just simply put into a baby booster shot eventually. Which again, by the way, baby booster shots don't cause autism. Quit saying that. In the same sense where, again, I do not understand why, as a society, we are hesitant to turn around and get a shot. It's just that simple. Well, I'm going to wait on herd immunity. Please don't. Oh, dear God. I cannot tell you guys, as I'm face palming, I'm not trying to on Facebook Live, but again, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard, I'm going to wait for herd immunity. No, you should not wait for herd immunity, because at this point we won't get there because too many of you guys have the same thought in your head. Well, the Rona might give me this, or I might get this. You won't get anything. Well, the Rona, it's killed some people in the vaccines. Again, specialized cases that we don't have a lot of information on. But at the simple fact that, everybody says it. Now, I keep on saying, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, where I sat there and said when the pandemic was hitting and we're getting virus information, and I sat there and said, wait for the known sources. And I keep stressing this heavily when it comes to known sources. I'm talking the National Health Institute. I'm talking CDC, Doctors Without Borders, the World Health Organization. All of those certain groups are reputable as all get out. If they're all saying the same thing, then they can be trusted. But the bottom line, folks, do not wait to get the shot. They're trying to actually make it easier for you to get the shot now. So I cannot imagine, above all else, why in the blue would you wait for the last possible second to get the shot? Because again, I've said it once, I'll say it again. What's your alternative? Because if you think that your body out of nowhere, and that's a very slim chance, out of nowhere that your body is going to be able to fight this thing, you are highly delusional or extremely lucky. Because honestly, a lot of doctors don't recommend that. And take from somebody who had a shot, I'll even tell you my experience with my Pfizer shot. My first shot, when I got it, I was cool. And then just one day out the blue, I just had a runny nose. That's it. For 48 hours. 48 hours I had a runny nose. That was it. No coughing, no hacking. For 48 hours, all I had was a runny nose. Once that time passed, right as rain. My second shot, nothing. Now, of course, it varies with everybody. I said some people have, where they inject you, the arm was sore. Or you might have, you might have went hot to cold. You might have felt drained or loopy or tired or all the above, actually. Some people had to ride it out for a couple of days. It's understandable because, again, that's your body adjusting and making antibodies to it. Again, guys, Biden and company is making it easier to get this shot. For all those that haven't got that shot out there by now, what's your excuse? It's just like voting. What's your excuse? Because again, don't get me wrong, I love working from home. I do. But do I miss the days where I can sit there and go out and work out without a mask? Yes. Do I miss the days where I can not have to worry about having to make sure I have a mask in the car when I go somewhere? Absolutely. Would I love to get back to movie theaters just because I'm a Marvel and DC fan and can't wait to see what's coming out next? Yes. But in order for us to get there, everybody has to do their part. That's the big thing. But moving right along, guys, as we get to the second last story before we wrap this up, I want to talk about businesses. Businesses right now who have a hard time staffing people.
Is getting ready for tourists.
It's going to be a huge summer at the shore.
The only thing missing? Workers.
But right now, we would like to hire at least another dozen people.
Despite millions of people out of work, 42% of small business owners, like Scott Cronick, say they can't fill open positions.
The reason, I think, frankly, is because there's a lot of stimulus money out there.
With added unemployment benefits, many without jobs are receiving on average over $600 a week, around $16 an hour. That's more than some jobs pay. And a lot of those jobs are only part-time. It's a problem from Cape Cod to California wine country. And to compete, some businesses are even offering signing bonuses to hire people for the summer.
From hotels and casinos to small shops on the boardwalk, tourist towns like Atlantic City rely on summer. And less workers means less business.
But for over 4 million out-of-work Americans, it's fears of COVID keeping them home.
I'm going to start paying $12.50.
At a job fair in Atlantic City, 9 casinos came looking to fill 1,800 positions. It ended early. Only 20 people showed up.
Do you have a backup plan?
The backup plan is if managers are having to clean rooms and serve guests, that's what we're doing.
The Golden Nugget Casino wants to hire 150 people, dealers, waiters, housekeepers.
Could you afford to pay them more?
We could, but as we pay them more, the cost of goods goes up and customers are going to be paying more, and it's difficult.
A return to summer as we know it might just cost a little more. Stephanie Rule, NBC News.
Okay, so let's think about this for a second. Because you've probably seen this on Facebook and on social medias where you see areas like Crystals or pick your poison on any fast food joint where they sit there and say close because employees don't want to work. They're too busy getting unemployment. And you probably see a lot of conservative people turn out there and put out there, well, it must be, all these jobs out here and all these job opportunities out here, and yet you don't want to leave the house because you're getting unemployment. Again, guys, I have been saying this from Jump Street. Sites on Facebook like Fight for 15 have been saying this, that in this pandemic honestly has shined a big light on what a lot of folks already know. That those in certain industries, like the travel industry, the food industry, the leisure industry, pretty much those areas, cooks, those working fast food, housekeepers, those working in hotels, things of that nature, that they're honestly getting the short end of the stick. And so when you're turning around, it's like, well, if you're on unemployment, you can get $600 a week. When your unemployment is more than what you make at a job, why are you surprised that folks are gonna? Number one, why are you surprised that folks get more on unemployment than they do at their job, but you're mad at unemployment? No, it should be the other way around. Why does your unemployment pay more than your current job? Which a lot of people are actually not only coming to find out, but it's like, why work for you? Why work for you and kill myself and I get this amount, or I can claim unemployment and I get this amount? You're mad at the wrong people, especially businesses. And of course, you heard the journalist ask the guy, well, could you afford to pay people? Yeah, but prices would go up. So let me get this straight. Your argument is that, yes, you could pay individuals more, but the prices would go up. Sir, I don't think you've noticed, but every year the prices have gone up regardless. I'm like, it is amazing to me. It's almost like the McDonald's analogy. Like if McDonald's actually paid their workers livable wages, that means the price of the Big Mac would go up 7 cents. 7 cents. I wish I could make this up. That the price of the Big Mac would go up 7 cents. That's their argument. That you're telling me that folks that eat at McDonald's will pay 7 cents more for a burger? I'm pretty sure they will with no issue. But again, like I said before, this is their argument. And their argument, again, is just asinine. Because the truth of the matter is, they do not, above all else, just don't want to pay individuals living wage. This is why. This is exactly why it is viable. It is needed for the minimum wage to be increased. I mean, it's needed because a lot of people are realizing that this $7 and $8 and $9 an hour is not even breaking even. It's below poverty. Because again, if you can make $600 a week, $600 a week is more than your average pay of $7.30 an hour. It's crazy, right? But again, please make that argument that I have to increase my cost in order to pay my workers, because then you're mad because the workers don't want to work. No, workers don't want to work for crap wages. Nobody wants to work twice as hard for the same amount of money that you're getting, and at the end of it all, through bills, utilities, car, family, kids, however, whatever you have at the end of it, if your paycheck isn't enough to get you by and you still take up another job, or two parents both have to work a part-time job to make ends meet and things of that nature, something is wrong. And the only thing I can point out to is capitalism has run wild. Because that's what happened to the American. Because the truth be told, not to get too deep into this, that's what happened to the American infrastructure. Do you wonder what happened to American steel? Do you want to know what happened to our lumber? Do you want to know what happened to our welders, to our machinists, to our plumbers, to our unions and things of that nature? Where we were in a great industrial age, and then somewhere between 1992 and now, it's went overseas. Why? Because some American corporations have figured out to maximize their profit while reducing their workforce. That's what got us to the mess we are now. Shouldn't be surprised. But that's really going to do it for our stories today, guys. I want to go ahead and get out to our feel-good segment, because even though we are in the middle of the week, tomorrow's Thursday, I still want to do a feel-good segment on how the Frack we got here. We do cover a lot of things, sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes can be a little bit on the doom and gloom side, and we need something to get us through to Thursday, that pre-Friday, to give us a little bit of life, to make us, believe in humanity a little bit. And this story is basically geared toward teachers, because earlier this week, well, actually it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and I have a special place in my heart for educators, because honestly, just like a lot of professions out there, it's a very honored profession. Those individuals have done so much for kids just like me, that have led me to be the person I am. So every time I want to see a teacher, I want to say thank you for your service, because simply put, you took on a job that a lot of people would not do. And this teacher here, that's in this video, is definitely should be given her roses.
He's celebrating service, and this morning, it's a special one. We are honoring National Teacher Appreciation Day.
Yeah, and Jenna's made her way down to Brenham, Texas, with a teacher whose greatest lesson is never giving up. Hi, Jenna. Morning.
Hi, morning, guys. I cannot wait to introduce you to Mrs. Smith. Wanda has an incredible journey. She grew up here in Brenham, always hoping to return here to teach. And after a long and difficult journey, she did just that.
When I stand in front of my classroom, that in itself, my classroom, I am living my dream.
Teaching has never been just a job for Wanda Smith.
And why does it need space?
It's her life purpose and her greatest accomplishment.
We're gonna go with the pineapple.
And not one that came easy.
You graduated from high school, and your dreams, you were going to be a teacher, but life had a different path.
My plans were to go straight into college, but then my mother got sick. And so those dreams had to be deferred, and I just got a job and started providing for the family.
She couldn't stay away from the place that felt like home. Mrs. Smith worked around the clock as a bus monitor and a custodian for the Brenham School District while caring for her family.
You were working like crazy hours.
I was working 3 to 11 at night for custodians. I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to be a bus monitor. Sometimes I didn't get to sleep. I never really thought about it. I just did it because it had to be done.
Years later, she became a teacher's assistant and decided it was time to give her dream a shot. At the age of 37, Wanda enrolled at a nearby college.
Were you nervous about going back to school?
Yes, I was totally nervous because all of the children in there, they were children, and sometimes I was older than the professor.
Taking classes at night, she pushed through, but not without some setbacks along the way, facing incredible personal loss.
I lost my mom, my sisters in my journey.
But you kept going.
I was so happy to tell them that I was going back to school. They were so proud of me. My sister would be the one I would talk to at night when I was coming home. Then when I lost her, that took a lot out of me. And yes, I did want to stop. But my husband, he sat me down and he let me know that I wasn't the only one that made sacrifices. And so I was like, okay, I can do this. I can keep going.
Her husband, Darren, and their 3 kids supported her each step of the way. 10 years later, Wanda Smith joined the graduating class of 2010.
Wanda Diane Smith.
I got a diploma. I mean, somebody growing up in the projects that people counted out. I got a diploma.
Mrs. Smith became a first-grade teacher at Brenham Elementary, the same school she once cleaned.
Wanda Smith is the portrait of an American teacher, and she's such an inspiration to us all.
In the last year, as so many struggled during the pandemic, Mrs. Smith stepped up when her kids needed her the most.
You started delivering packets to some of your kids' mailboxes.
A lot of my kids are from single-parent homes. So when my parents would call me, because I was checking in with them, and they would say, well, Miss Smith, you know, I got to work. Well, I would be like, okay, give me your address. It was nothing, because we have to help one another.
Her perseverance and dedication, one of the greatest lessons for her students.
She's the best teacher ever. She helps us with everything.
I want them to know that school, these are going to be the best years of your life. And I want them to love school enough that they want to come and see me every day. And if they love me like that, they're going to come and see me every day.
Mrs. Smith, I know that you think we are here just to talk about teaching during the pandemic, but it is Teacher Appreciation Day, and we want to let you know that we appreciate you, and there's some others that want to do that too, so walk with me. Watch your step. What do you think about watching your journey on TV?
It was great.
It was great. Your students. Come on. Come on. It's so hard not to hug you, Mrs. Smith. Okay, walk with me. Walk with me. These are all your kids. They love you. They love you so much. And so they are your first surprise and probably your best, but let's stop right here because we got some more.
Oh, God.
Mrs. Smith, step back just a little.
Carson
I want to introduce you to Dr. Alyssa White. She's the president of Sam Houston State University. Dr. White, what do you got?
I'm excited. So, Wanda, you're an inspiration to us all. And on behalf of Sam Houston State University, we've created a scholarship in your honor. It is the Wanda Smith Make a Difference Scholarship that will go to a Sam Houston State University first-generation student who wants a career in teaching. Congratulations on your accomplishments.
There you go. Thank you.
Okay, but that ain't it. Let's keep going. Sorry, I know I shouldn't use bad grammar in front of Mrs. Smith, but this is the mayor of Brenham. Mayor Tate, you got something too.
Yes. Wanda, you're not just an inspiration to your students, but also to our community. And in that regards, I would like to, as mayor of the city of Brenham, declare today, May 4th, 2021, be the best you can be, Wanda Smith Day. We thank you for your service to our community and school.
I got a day.
Today is Wanda Smith Day! That's pretty cool. Could you ever have imagined?
No, never.
Going to school here that one day you'd have a day named after you?
A day named after me. Oh.
I think you need more than a day, but that's not it. Here's our final thing. I think you know your principal, Principal Roki, who has something for you.
Miss Smith, you inspire us more than you know. Your dedication to children, for being nice and working hard every single day, for going above and beyond, we thank you. Congratulations, and we love you.
A bench for your school, for you. And there's 3 people behind that bench, 3 people behind that bench who love you so very much. Your husband, Darren, and your 2 kids. What do you want to, you can give them a hug. You want to? And kids, if you want to come over, come on over.
It's okay.
And here are all your kids, Mrs. Smith. We know that your one regret is that your mom and sisters weren't here, but we know that they are looking down. So very, very proud of you today and every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys. That's about. We need all the Kleenexes in the world. So we'll send it back to you,
Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, wow. Mrs. Smith.
Hold up.
And like I said before, guys, the impact that an educator has speaks volumes. And trust me, I have a few that I still remember now that I find myself reciting stuff that they said that I said I'd never say. And as I work with kids, especially my own niece and nephews and other kids out there, I'm repeating the exact same stuff that I swore up and down I'd never say. I blame you all. Nah, really, I love teachers. That's just the way I am. But anyway, with that being said, guys, that's going to do it for our podcast tonight. I do thank everybody that watched, that shared this, that liked the page, even went to the How the Frack We Got Here Facebook page from there. I certainly appreciate it. But before I do got here, I do got to do some shameless plugging. The link at the bottom, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for all of my Facebook and YouTube groups for all my podcasts. How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and also the Off Limits podcast. And of course, my podcast schedule really hasn't changed. As you can see, every Wednesday tonight from 8:30 to 10 is the midweek edition of How the Frack We Got Here. Friday at 8:30 to 10 p.m. Is my video game, anime, comic book, wrestling podcast, Get Bit, which I will have with hopefully Joe and a whole lot of other people, if possible. I hope we do. Of course, Saturday with 10 a.m. to noon is the weekend edition of How the Frack We Got Here. A little bit later that night, Saturday night between 8:30 to 10, is the very adult Off Limits podcast, in which we talk about any and all subjects, and I do mean any and all subjects, but it's definitely off limits. So all of my stuff can be found there. Let me explain to my boy Bob on Big BZA on Facebook. He actually has several podcasts of his own. He does do the VSTs, which he's starting to do now every Sunday, and I think he's doing a pop-up one when he feels like it. But definitely go to Big BZA on social media to see that. I definitely know he does Rhythmness on Mondays. You can reset your weeks, and it's definitely for the grown and adult, because it's kind of like America's Funniest Home Videos, except done from World Star. But definitely don't bring your kids. Of course, he still has his Funkin' Around, in which it's his beat page, which he makes beats and sells beats. So if you're interested in those types of things, definitely look up Vaughn's page at BigBZA or BigBZA on all social medias. Of course, his Rhythmness, which I was actually on his one that is back since hiatus. Also, look on his Facebook page to see when that will be coming back around again, because it was kind of fun. It was really fun to be back there with him podcasting again, because like I said before, I do talk a lot, but my buddy Vaughn brings a perspective on a lot of things that I certainly do miss, and I'm just glad to have him back. Beyond that, guys, I still do have my travel page, Uncle Obi's Adventures and More, which basically I do help travel, and trust me, as the pandemic is I'm not going to say winding down, but it's becoming more and more manageable and folks are starting to travel again. Let me be that guy that can help you to basically get you where you want to be. I just want you to be able to get to where you want to go and save a little bit of money. Just so you can enjoy a vacation, because trust me, after working for, in my case, I haven't had a vacation almost 5 years. So I'm already looking forward to the cruise that the cruise I am so ready to plan with me and my significant other right now, because a brother needs a vacation. I cannot stress that enough. But again, let me be that guy to get you there, whether it's down the street, across states, or across the pond, whether it's hotel, airfare, rental car, things of that nature. Let me be that guy to get you there, because who else better than your Uncle Obi to get you where you want to be? Because at Uncle Obi's Adventures and More, we just don't sell travel, we sell great memories. And yes, I still do have a $100 referral going on, which some people have learned and are making, and are definitely making a mint. Because I sit there and said it before, I don't take back on what I say. I love to pay it forward. I love when people bring me business, because I want to be able to repay that in kind. So if you know somebody that's traveling and you refer them to me and they book travel with me, whether it's hotel, airfare, rental car, all the above, and as long as they book it with me, you get paid $100, no matter how you want it. Cash App, Bitcoin, crypto, smoke signal, up to you. But again, it's $100 per referral, and yes, there is no limits on referrals. So if you know 5 people, if you know 50 people, if you know 500 people that are going to be traveling very soon, and you send them to me, then it's going to be a good payday for you. But aside from that, guys, last thing I'll say about this, like I said, COVID-19 is still out there. Please wear a mask, although for a lot, even the CDC is relaxing some restrictions for fully vaccinated individuals. Please exercise extreme caution, because like I said, you may not know who's vaccinated or whatnot. So if you're not sure, bring a mask. Can't hurt. Aside from that, thank you all those wonderful essential individuals. You've heard me name them many a times, from all sorts of life, whether you're in the hospitals, whether you're out there still working in the restaurant industry, or whether you're still out there in a gas station or grocery store, if you're a truck driver, or if you're still working in areas like Amazon, UPS, and DHL and FedEx. You are all should be given more than what you've been given, but still thank you, and you should be recognized for all that you do. Beyond that, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack we got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not out here to change minds. We're not here to persuade you. We're simply out here to do what the news stations of old used to do, which is just inform you and allow you to make up your own mind. Because we do a lot better as a society when we're informed. When we're uninformed, we get idiots like Trump. When we're informed, we get our first Madam Black Vice President. Hey, got her in the first shot. Nice. Aside from that, guys, I hope to see you a little bit later on Friday night for Get Ben, of course, for the weekend. But please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll get through this. Peace.